Victor Kessler grabbed Elena by the throat and slammed her against the glass wall, 60 floors above the city, and smiled. "Tell Blackwood," he said softly, like a man ordering coffee, "that I own everything he loves now." Her feet left the floor, the city glittered below her like broken diamonds. And in that moment, Elena Marlowe, a woman who had survived poverty, humiliation, and starting over with nothing, realized the man she had quietly fallen in love with had brought this darkness straight to her door. She should have walked away months ago. She didn't. And now Victor Kessler was squeezing the air from her lungs while his men destroyed the office she had rebuilt with her own hands. Before this moment, there was a smile. Just one small, accidental smile. And it changed everything. If this story already has you gripping your seat, you are exactly where you belong. Subscribe to this channel right now and follow Elena and Damien's story all the way to the end, because I promise you, what comes next will break your heart before it puts it back together. Hit that like button and drop your city or country in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Elena Marlowe had exactly $43 in her checking account when she walked through the lobby of Blackwood Holdings for the first time. She knew the exact number because she had checked her phone in the parking garage 3 times, the way people do when they are hoping the number will somehow change if they look at it enough. It never does. The building was the kind of place that made regular people feel like they had accidentally wandered into someone else's life. 60 floors of black glass and steel rising out of downtown like a monument to money. The lobby had marble floors that probably cost more per square foot than her monthly rent had ever been, back when she still had a place to rent. She adjusted the strap of her bag. It was a good bag. Leather. She had bought it 3 years ago when she still had a real job, a real apartment, and a fiancé who hadn't cleaned out their joint account and disappeared to Miami with her coworker. The bag was the last nice thing she owned, and she carried it like armor. "Elena Marlowe," she told the woman at the reception desk. "I'm here for the executive assistant position, human resources, 9th floor." The receptionist looked at her the way people look at someone who has shown up to a party they weren't sure they were invited to. "9th floor," she repeated, with a smile that didn't reach anything above her cheekbones. Elena smiled back, genuinely, because she had learned a long time ago that genuine smiles cost nothing, and sometimes they were the only currency she had. She rode the elevator alone. The position was supposed to be for the deputy director of operations, a man named Gerald Chen who, according to the job listing, needed a highly organized assistant with experience managing executive schedules, correspondence, and interdepartmental communications. She had all of that. 10 years of it, at a company that had laid her off in a mass restructuring 8 months ago, right after her life had already fallen apart in every other possible way. She needed this job. Not in the way people say they need things when they want them badly. She needed it the way you need air when you're already running out. HR went well. The woman interviewing her, a brisk woman named Patricia, who seemed allergic to small talk, went through Elena's resume with the practiced speed of someone who had seen too many of them. "Your previous role," Patricia said, "you were executive assistant to a VP. Senior Vice President of Client Relations, yes, for 9 years. Why did you leave?" "Restructuring." Elena kept her voice flat and professional. She did not say, "And my personal life was already burning when that happened, and I couldn't afford to keep my apartment. So I moved into my cousin's spare room, and I've been there for 8 months trying not to take up too much space." Patricia made a note. "Your references checked out. Salary is within your stated range. Can you start Monday?" "I can start today," Elena said. Patricia blinked. For just a second, something softened in her face, like she recognized what that sentence meant, even if she wasn't going to say so. "Monday is fine," she said. "But let me be clear about something, Ms. Marlowe. You'll be assisting the Deputy Director of Operations. However, his office is on the 58th floor, adjacent to the executive suites. You will need to be professional, discreet, and extremely careful about which doors you open on that floor." Elena nodded. "Of course." "I mean that literally," Patricia said, and her voice dropped just slightly. "There are certain offices on that floor that are private. If a door doesn't have a visible nameplate, do not open it. Do you understand?" It struck Elena as oddly specific advice for an otherwise standard orientation. Understood, she said. She started Monday. The first week went fine. Gerald Chen was exactly what she expected. A mid-level executive with big responsibilities and too many meetings and a habit of forgetting to eat lunch. Elena organized his calendar, filtered his emails, prepared briefing documents, and made sure he had coffee before the 8 a.m. calls that he hated. He was decent to her. Not warm, but decent. She had worked for worse. The 58th floor was different from any other floor in the building, and she noticed it immediately. The energy was quieter up there. The other employees moved with a kind of careful awareness, like people who always knew exactly where they were in relation to every other person in the room. Nobody wasted words. Nobody lingered. There was a hallway at the far end of the floor that she learned quickly was not for her. She didn't think much about it. Every executive floor had its restricted areas. What she didn't know was what, or who, was at the end of it. She found out on her 9th day. Gerald had asked her to deliver a physical contract to the legal team, which was located on the far side of the 58th floor. She had done it twice before and knew the route. But that morning there was construction on the main corridor, someone replacing a section of flooring, and the direct path was blocked. Go around through the north corridor, the construction worker told her. Follow it to the end and turn right. She did. She was reading the labels on the doors as she walked, all nameplates, all proper, until she reached the end of the north corridor and turned right, and found herself in a short hallway with 2 doors. One had a nameplate, one didn't. She was turning to go right when her heel caught the edge of a floor mat that had folded up at the corner, and she stumbled, not badly, just a half step forward, and her hand hit the door without the nameplate. It opened. Doors that aren't locked open easily, and this one did. She looked up. The office was large. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a conference table, bookshelves, and a man standing at the window with his back to her, a phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a voice so low and controlled it barely qualified as sound. He turned. Elena's first thought was that he was younger than she expected for a man who carried himself like that. Her second thought was that she had absolutely walked into the wrong room. Her third thought arrived before she could do anything about the first two, which was that this man had the kind of face that made people stop talking mid-sentence. He was looking at her the way people look at something unexpected, not angry, not welcoming, just still. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and ended the call without waiting for a response. They stared at each other for what was probably 3 seconds, but felt considerably longer. "I'm so sorry," Elena said immediately. "I took the north corridor because of the construction, and the door was unlocked, and I'm looking for the legal department. I have a contract delivery for—" "You work on this floor," he said. It wasn't a question. "I'm Gerald Chen's assistant, Elena Marlowe. I started 9 days ago." She realized she was listing facts like they were a defense. She stopped. "I'm genuinely sorry for interrupting. It won't happen again." She should have left then. She was already backing up. But she caught the look on his face, and there was something in it she hadn't expected from a man like that, in an office like that. At a moment when a stranger had just walked through his private door, he looked exhausted. Not tired from a long meeting exhausted. The kind of exhausted that lives behind a person's eyes and has been there for years. Before she could stop herself, before professionalism caught up with human instinct, she gave him a small, real smile. The kind she gave the receptionist downstairs. The kind that cost nothing. "You look like you could use about 14 hours of sleep," she said. "I hope your day gets better." And then she stepped back and pulled the door closed. She found the legal department, delivered the contract, and went back to her desk. She forgot about it almost immediately because she had work to do, and $43 and the daily business of keeping herself upright took all the space she had. Damian Blackwood did not forget about it. He stood at his window for 2 full minutes after that door closed, which was unusual for him. He was not a man who stood still. He was 38 years old and had spent roughly 20 of those years building an empire that combined legitimate business with the kind of arrangements that didn't show up in annual reports. Blackwood Holdings was real. The construction divisions, the real estate portfolios, the import operations. All of it real, all of it profitable, all of it managed by people who were good at their jobs. The other part was also real. The alliances with men like Victor Kessler, who moved money through channels that official banking didn't know existed. The agreements that had been necessary when Damien was 22 and had nothing and needed backing from people who didn't ask questions about where ambition came from. He had told himself for years that he was building toward a way out. He was beginning to believe that might be a story he told himself to sleep at night. Every person on this floor knew who he was. They performed their respect like a play, carefully, correctly, with full awareness of what happened when people around Damien Blackwood made mistakes. Nobody smiled at him like that woman just had, like he was just a person who looked tired. He sat back down at his desk. He had a call with Victor in an hour. He had 3 contracts to review. He had a report on the Eastern Distribution Network that needed a decision before end of day. He pulled up the employee directory. Elena Marlowe, Executive Assistant, Operations Division. Start date, 12 days ago. He looked at the photo from her badge file. Professional headshot. She was looking directly at the camera with the same direct quality she'd had in his office. No performance in it. No angle. He closed the file. He told himself he was just checking who had walked into his private office. Standard security practice. He opened it again 20 minutes later. She was at her desk the next morning when Gerald Chen came to her with an unusual request. "There's been a change," Gerald said, looking like a man delivering news he hadn't asked to deliver. "Effective this week, you're being transferred." Elena went still. "Transferred? Not out of the company. You're moving to a different executive." Gerald wasn't meeting her eyes. "The request came from the 58th floor." Her stomach dropped 2 inches. "Gerald," she said carefully, "which office on the 58th floor?" He finally looked at her. "The one at the end of the north corridor," he said. She stared at him. "You walked into his office by accident," Gerald said, and his voice had gone very quiet. "I don't know what you said to him, but he's requested you as his personal assistant." Elena, that doesn't happen. Nobody gets a personal meeting with Damien Blackwood by accident and walks out with a job offer." "I didn't offer anything." "He did," Gerald said. "And when Damien Blackwood makes a request, the answer is yes." Elena sat back in her chair. She thought about the exhausted look behind that man's eyes, the way he'd said, "I'll call you back," and ended the call without another word. The way the whole room had felt pressurized, like too much was happening in it that she couldn't see. "What exactly does being his personal assistant involve?" she asked. Gerald paused for just a half-second too long. "Whatever he needs," he said. "You'll be briefed on the specifics." She knew, in the careful way her gut had learned to know things after 8 months of learning to pay attention, that the half-second pause and the vague answer were telling her something. She thought about $43. "When do I start?" she said. The briefing came from a man named Marcus, who was Damien Blackwood's head of security and wore suits that fit so well they seemed designed to remind you that he was not someone who made mistakes. "Mr. Blackwood's schedule is managed through this system," Marcus told her, walking her through the executive suite that would now be her domain. "His calendar is locked. You input appointments only after direct confirmation from him or from me. Nothing else." "Understood." "His phone calls are logged but not recorded by you. His correspondence, the correspondence you will see, is business only. There are communications that pass through other channels that you will not see and should not ask about." Elena looked at him. "Other channels?" "Correct." "And if something arrives through those channels that ends up in front of me?" Marcus studied her for a moment. "Nothing will." "But if it does?" "Then you bring it directly to me," Marcus said, "and you don't read it first." She filed that away. "He keeps unusual hours," Marcus continued. "Some mornings he's here at 5, some nights he doesn't leave until midnight. Your official hours are 8 to 6, but you need to be available by phone." "Salary?" He told her the number. She kept her face exactly where it was. The number was 4 times what she had been making as Gerald Chen's assistant. It was more than she'd made at any point in her career. It was also the kind of number that buys silence. She understood that. "One more thing," Marcus said, and this was the first time his composure shifted, just slightly, at the edges. "Mr. Blackwood is a private man. What happens in this office stays in this office. Not because you will be asked to do anything improper, but because discretion is the first and most important quality of anyone who works at this level. Elena looked at him. I have been doing this for 10 years, she said. I understand discretion. Good. Do you have a question for me? She asked. Because I have one for you. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Why me? She said. I've been in this building for 9 days. I accidentally walked into the wrong room. That doesn't seem like a logical basis for offering someone a position like this. Marcus was quiet for a moment. No, he said. It doesn't. He didn't say anything else, and she didn't push it, and she walked into Damian Blackwood's outer office and sat down at a desk that still had the plastic film on the monitor. Someone had ordered it new, for her. She met Damian properly at 7:50 that first morning. He came through the main door with his jacket already on and a phone in his hand and a look on his face that said the day had already started arguing with him and it wasn't even 8 o'clock. He stopped when he saw her. She stood. Good morning, Mr. Blackwood. I'm Elena Marlowe. I've reviewed your schedule for today and flagged 3 items I'd like your input on before your 9 o'clock call. He looked at her. You remembered me, he said. You were in your own office, she said. I was the one who was lost. Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile. She would learn later that Damian Blackwood did not distribute smiles carelessly, if at all. But something. What are the 3 items? He said. She walked him through them. He listened without interrupting. He gave her direct answers. He didn't explain himself, didn't qualify, didn't look at his phone while she was talking. When she was finished, he said, Move the 2 o'clock to 3. Everything else holds. Done. He started toward his office, then stopped at the door. You said yesterday I looked like I needed sleep, he said, without turning around. Elena kept her voice level. I did. Do you say things like that to everyone? Only when it's true. He was quiet for a second. I slept 4 hours, he said. That's not enough. I know, he said, and he went into his office. She sat back down at her desk and stared at her monitor for a moment. She had the feeling, sharp and specific and slightly uncomfortable, that she had just said something to a man who almost nobody said real things to, and that he had noticed. The test came 3 weeks in. A man showed up at the executive suite unannounced. Late in the afternoon, expensive suit, the easy confidence of someone who didn't expect to be told no. He gave his name as Raymond Cole and said he was a business associate of Mr. Blackwood's and needed 5 minutes. Elena asked him to wait and pulled up the contact database. Raymond Cole was not in it. She went to the door of Damian's office and knocked twice, their signal, and opened it an inch. There's a Raymond Cole in the waiting area, she said. He says he's a business associate. He's not in the contact database. Damian looked up from his desk. For just half a second, and she filed this away too. His expression did something controlled and careful. Tell him I'm unavailable, Damian said. For today or indefinitely? Indefinitely. Do you want me to take a message? No. She went back to Raymond Cole and told him, with perfect professionalism, that Mr. Blackwood was not available and would not be available going forward, and that if he had business correspondence, he was welcome to submit it through the company's official channels. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, the kind of look that was measuring something. You're new, he said. I'm Mr. Blackwood's assistant, she said. I hope you have a good afternoon. He left. She wrote up a brief note. Raymond Cole, unscheduled, approximately 4:15 p.m., directed to official channels, and put it on Damian's desk before the end of the day. The next morning, Marcus was waiting at her desk when she arrived. The note you left about Raymond Cole, he said. Yes. That was the right call. All of it. He paused. Most assistants at this level let someone like that through because they're uncomfortable saying no to a man in a good suit. Elena looked at him. I've said no to men in good suits before, she said. It gets easier. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. That afternoon, Damian stopped at her desk on his way back from a meeting. The note, he said. I thought you'd want a record. I did. He looked at her. Cole is not someone I do business with anymore. If he comes back, call Marcus immediately. Of course. He started to walk away. Mr. Blackwood, she said. He stopped. Are there other names I should know, people I should watch for? He turned back slowly. Most assistants, she knew, would not have asked that. Most assistants in her position would manage the information they were given and leave the rest alone. She was not most assistants. Damian Blackwood looked at her for a long moment, the quiet, assessing look she was starting to recognize. "I'll have Marcus send you a list," he said. The list arrived that afternoon. It had 11 names on it. She memorized all of them before she left for the day. That night, sitting on the edge of her cousin's pull-out couch, with her laptop open and her life still technically in pieces around her, she thought about what kind of man keeps a list like that. She thought about the locked calendar, the other channels, the late nights, and the 4 hours of sleep. She thought about Raymond Cole's eyes when he looked at her, like he was cataloging her, like she was information. She should have been more frightened than she was. Instead, she opened her laptop and started drafting tomorrow's briefing document. She had a job. She had a desk with a new monitor. She had a salary that meant $43 would never be her emergency number again. She would figure out the rest. The late night started in her 4th week, not every night, but often enough that it became its own kind of rhythm. By 8 o'clock, the rest of the floor had emptied out, and it was just the two of them and the city below the glass, and the strange suspended quality of an office building after hours, when all the performance of the workday had gone home. She learned things about him in those hours that she couldn't have learned any other way. He did not eat dinner unless she ordered it. She started ordering it around 7 and leaving it on the corner of his desk without comment. The first time she did it, he looked at the container and then at her like she had done something unusual. "You don't have to do that," he said. "You'll work better if you eat," she said. "It's a practical decision." He didn't argue. She learned that he had a habit, when he was working through a difficult problem, of standing at the window with his arms crossed and staring at the city below. He'd stay like that for 10, 15 minutes, not moving. The first time she saw it, she thought something was wrong. The second time, she understood. It was how he thought. She stopped interrupting it. She learned that he had very few people he trusted. She could tell by the way his voice changed depending on who was on the phone. Controlled and careful with everyone, but with 2 or 3 people slightly less armored. Marcus was one of them. She was slowly, carefully, without either of them deciding it, becoming another. One night, a Tuesday, nearly 10 o'clock, the city below them doing its nighttime version of itself, she was finalizing a report at her desk when she heard his voice through the half-open office door. He wasn't on a call. He was talking to himself. Or not quite. More like talking at the problem in front of him, the way people do when they're alone and frustrated. "That doesn't work," he said. "That's never worked. I know it doesn't work." She got up and knocked on the open door. "Do you want another set of eyes on it?" she said. He looked up. For a second, she thought he was going to say no, to tell her it was above her clearance or outside her role or whatever boundary they were technically supposed to maintain. Instead, he said, "Come in." She sat across from him, and he walked her through the problem. A financial restructuring issue involving 3 subsidiaries, the kind of thing that required holding multiple moving pieces simultaneously and seeing how they connected. She listened. She asked 2 questions. She thought for a moment. "If you move the timeline on the second subsidiary to align with the first quarter close," she said slowly, "you have a 60-day window where the third one doesn't need to move at all. Does that solve the pressure you're under?" He went still. "Say that again," he said. She said it again, more slowly. He grabbed a pen and started writing. 3 minutes later, he put the pen down and leaned back in his chair. "Yes," he said, "that solves it." She nodded and stood up to go back to her desk. "Elena." She stopped. "Where did that come from?" he said. 9 years of watching executives fix problems," she said. "You learn patterns." He looked at her in the way she was getting used to, like he was revising something. "Thank you," he said. "Not good work. Not that was helpful. Thank you." Like she had done something personal. She went back to her desk. She finished the report. She thought, very carefully and then deliberately stopped thinking, about the way he had said her name. Elena. Not Ms. Marlowe. Not Hay. Not the polite distance of a professional title. Her name. The building hummed around her. The city glittered 60 floors below. She saved her document and shut her laptop and told herself she was just tired. But she smiled a little on the elevator down. Not the smile she gave everyone, a different kind. The kind you don't give on purpose. The kind that surprises you. The list with 11 names sat in Elena's memory like a stone in a shoe. She didn't obsess over it. She just knew it was there. 6 weeks into the job, she had learned to read the floor the way you learn to read weather. Not from the sky itself, but from how people around you start moving before the storm arrives. When Marcus appeared on the floor before 9 in the morning, something was wrong. When Damien's 9 o'clock calls ran past 10:30, the afternoon would be tense. When the North Corridor went quiet in a particular way, not normal quiet, but the kind where everyone was suddenly very focused on their own screens, she had learned to keep her head down and her questions to herself. She was good at this job, better than she'd expected to be, given that half of it was still undefined. She managed the visible calendar, filtered correspondence, handled vendors and junior executives, and the steady stream of people who wanted 60 seconds of Damien Blackwood's time and were not going to get it. She prepared briefing documents that she had started structuring differently than Marcus's previous assistant had, less formal, more direct, organized around decisions rather than information. Damien had not commented on the change. He had also stopped asking for clarification on items that his previous briefings had left murky. She took that as confirmation she was doing it right. What she could not read yet was the undercurrent. She felt it the way you feel a sound just below the register you can actually hear. Something that makes the air in the room slightly different without being identifiable. It was in the calls that happened on the phone she wasn't supposed to see. It was in the way Marcus sometimes came into the outer office and looked at her with a measuring expression, like he was checking something. It was in the 11 names on the list, which she had memorized, and which had so far produced 2 more unannounced visits, both turned away, both logged, both triggering the same quiet efficiency for Marcus afterward. She told herself she was an assistant. She wasn't hired to understand the whole picture. She almost believed it. It was a Wednesday morning in her 7th week when the first crack appeared in the thing she'd been carefully not looking at directly. She was alone in the outer office, Damien in a meeting on the 42nd floor, when the private line rang. Not her line, the secondary line on the corner of her desk that she had been told to answer only if Marcus was unreachable, and the call came through on a specific extension. The extension matched. Marcus wasn't picking up. She answered it. "Blackwood's office," she said. There was a pause. Then a man's voice, smooth and unhurried. "You're not Marcus." "No," she said. "Mr. Blackwood is unavailable. Can I take a message?" Another pause, longer this time. She had the feeling of being studied through the phone line, which was an uncomfortable feeling. "Tell him Victor called," the man said. "Tell him the timeline moved up, and he needs to call me back before end of day. Tell him that's not a request." The line went dead. She sat for a moment with the receiver still in her hand. Victor. The name wasn't on the list of 11. She would have remembered it. But the way the man said, "That's not a request," flat, without heat, which somehow made it worse than if he'd been angry, landed in her chest like something cold. She wrote the message exactly as he'd given it, word for word. She put it on Damien's desk. When he came back from the meeting, she watched him pick it up. She was not watching directly. She was looking at her screen, but she had developed, without intending to, a peripheral awareness of him that was embarrassingly accurate. His posture changed when he read it. Just slightly. Something in his shoulders. He went into his office and closed the door. She heard him on the phone less than 2 minutes later, though she couldn't make out words. The call lasted 4 minutes. When he came back out, his face was exactly as composed as it always was, which she had learned was itself a kind of tell. When things were ordinary, he didn't bother arranging his face. "The message," he said, stopping at her desk. "You wrote it exactly as he said it." "Yes." Most people would have softened the wording. "You needed to know exactly what he said," Elena told him. "I'm not here to edit people's intentions." He looked at her. Something moved through his expression that she couldn't name. "No," he said. "You're not." He paused. "If Victor calls again, you transfer it to Marcus. Don't take a message." "Understood." He went back to his office. She stared at her screen and thought, Victor. The timeline moved up. That's not a request. She thought about the 11 names and the calls she wasn't supposed to see and the way Marcus showed up early on bad mornings. She thought about the salary that was 4 times what she'd been making before. She made herself stop thinking and went back to work. That night, she didn't smile on the elevator down. The thing about working that close to a person, Elena discovered, was that you learned them the way you learn a city you live in. Not from a map, but from repetition, from turning the same corners every day until the shape of the place lived in your body without your having to think about it. She knew that Damien had a habit of reading physical documents instead of screens when something was important to him, like holding the paper made it more real. She knew he took his coffee without anything in it, which was either a preference or a punishment. She wasn't sure. She knew that when he was thinking, really thinking, he went quiet in a specific way that was different from his ordinary quietness, and that interrupting the wrong quiet was the one thing that had ever produced a flash of genuine irritation on his face. She had interrupted it exactly once. "Sorry," she'd said immediately. He'd looked at her. "What did you need?" "Your 3 o'clock called to confirm." "Tell them yes." Then after a beat, "You didn't know." "I'll learn," she said. She had. She didn't interrupt the thinking quiet anymore. What she was slower to learn, because she wasn't supposed to be learning it at all, was the shape of whatever it was that had started building between them in the late night hours and the early morning briefings and the moments when he said her name in a way that had nothing performative in it. It wasn't anything she could point to. There were no gestures, no crossed lines, nothing that would have looked like anything to an observer. He was professional. She was professional. Their entire interaction existed within the visible bounds of what it was supposed to be. But he had started asking her opinion on things that were not strictly in her job description. Not the financial restructuring problem. She told herself that was a one-time thing, a late night, a problem he happened to be working on when she happened to offer. But it kept happening. He'd present her with a personnel issue, not asking for a decision, just talking through it out loud the way people do when they're not quite thinking alone anymore. And she'd say what she saw, and he'd listen in the particular way he had, where you could tell he was actually processing what you said rather than waiting for you to finish. "The Harmon account manager," he said one evening. It was nearly 9. She'd been about to close her laptop. "He's been with the company 11 years. He's been underperforming for 3. "Is there a reason for the 3 years?" she asked. Damien looked at her. "His daughter got sick," she said. "I processed his medical leave extensions. I'm not trying to tell you how to run your company, but there's a reason." Damien was quiet. "She's better now," Lena added. His numbers started coming back in the last quarter. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "You read his file." "I processed the leave extensions. I noticed things." "You notice a lot of things. It's useful." "For whom?" The question surprised her. She looked at him. "For you," she said. "You make better decisions with better information. And that's why you notice things about people, for my benefit." There was something in the way he said it, not accusing, not quite, but direct in a way that made her feel like he was asking something slightly different than the words. "I notice things because people matter," she said. "What I do with what I notice, that part I direct toward being useful to you, that's the job." He held her gaze for a moment, 1 second too long to be purely professional. "The Harmon account manager keeps his position," he said. "Get me the updated numbers on his Q3 performance. I'll have them on your desk in the morning." She left before he could say anything else. Walking to the elevator, she pressed the button and stood very still and told herself, very firmly, that this was a job. That the man at the end of the North Corridor was her employer. That she had come to this building with $43 and a good bag and the desperate need to stabilize her life. And she had done exactly that, and she was not going to complicate it. The elevator arrived, she got in. She thought about the way he'd said for whom. She pressed the lobby button twice, which didn't make it arrive faster, but gave her hands something to do. The trouble arrived on a Thursday, during what was supposed to be a routine vendor meeting on the 32nd floor. Elena wasn't in the meeting. She didn't attend most meetings. She prepared the materials, managed the schedule, handled the follow-up. But she got a call from Damien's direct line at 11:47, which was unusual because he didn't call her during meetings, and she picked up on the first ring. "Get Marcus," he said. His voice was exactly the same as always, and somehow completely different. "Tell him conference room C, 32nd floor. Now." "I'm calling him now," she said. She reached Marcus on his cell. She gave him the message. He was already moving before she finished the sentence, which told her whatever this was, he understood it without needing details. She went back to her desk. She was not in the meeting. She was not supposed to know what happened in that room. What she knew was that 40 minutes later, Damien came back to the 58th floor with Marcus 2 steps behind him and a set to his jaw that she had not seen before. A man she didn't recognize came with them. 50s, gray hair, the look of someone who delivered bad news professionally. They went into Damien's office. The door closed. It didn't open for 2 hours. When it finally did, the man she didn't recognize left without looking at her. Marcus came out a minute later and stopped at her desk. "Clear as afternoon," Marcus said. "Already done," she said. She had done it at 12:15 when the meeting ran past the scheduled hour. Marcus paused. "How did you know to do that?" His 1:30 was a call with the Frankfurt office. I pushed it to tomorrow and told them a scheduling conflict had come up. His 3 o'clock was an internal review. I moved it to next week. The rest of the afternoon was prep work he can recover. She looked at Marcus. "Is there something else you need me to do?" He studied her. "No," he said. He left. Damien came out of his office 20 minutes later. He stopped in the doorway. "You cleared the afternoon," he said. "You had a 2-hour unscheduled meeting. The afternoon wasn't going to be useful anyway." He looked at her with the expression that meant he was revising something again. "Come in," he said. "Close the door." She did. He was standing at the window. Not the thinking posture, something different, tension in his body that he was containing rather than releasing. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Not because I owe you an explanation, because it affects your job and you should know." She waited. "There are people connected to this company's history who are becoming a problem," he said. "Old connections, things I've been working to separate from for years. It's accelerating faster than I planned." She kept her face neutral. "How does that affect my job?" "Your access to my schedule, my office, my correspondence, that access is valuable to certain people, not because of what you know, because of what they think you might know." He turned from the window and looked at her directly. "If anyone outside this office contacts you about your work here, anyone, Elena, you come to me immediately. Not Marcus first, me." The use of her first name landed differently than usual. "Has someone contacted me already?" she asked. "Not yet." "But you expect them to." He didn't answer, which was its own answer. "All right," she said. "All right," he repeated, like he'd expected more pushback. "You're not going to ask me what this is about?" "Would you tell me if I did?" A pause. "Not everything." "Then asking wouldn't change my information level, just my anxiety level," she said. "I'd rather stay useful." He looked at her for a long moment. The window behind him showed the city in its midday version, bright, busy, indifferent to what happened inside 60 floors of glass. "You're very practical," he said. "I've had a practical couple of years," she said. "It's a muscle. You use it enough, it gets strong." He almost smiled. Almost. "Thank you for handling the afternoon," he said. "That's the job." "Elena." She stopped at the door. "I know you notice more than you say," he told her. "I know you've been filing things away since the first week. The calls, the names, the patterns." He paused. "I'm not asking you to stop. I'm asking you to trust me with whatever you see." She turned around. "I've been trusting you with it," she said. "Every name I flagged, every message I logged, every afternoon I cleared without being asked. That's me trusting you with what I see." He was very still. "I know," he said. "I know that." She left. She walked back to her desk and sat down and placed her hands flat on the surface for a moment, the way she did sometimes when she needed to feel something solid. He knew she'd been watching. He'd probably known for weeks. And instead of shutting her out, he had told her, directly, without dressing it up, that there was something coming and that she was inside the radius of it. A smarter woman would have been frightened. Elena Marlowe was frightened, but she was also something else, and that something else was the problem. She was not ready to name it. But it was there, sitting in her chest with the weight of something real, and she couldn't file it away the way she filed everything else. She had been drawn to him from the first morning, not by the money or the power or the reputation, none of which she had wanted to be drawn to, but by the way he listened, by the 4 hours of sleep and the exhausted eyes and the fact that the most feared man in a building full of people who feared him had stood at his window and let a stranger with a good bag and $43 tell him he looked tired and hadn't flinched. She had seen something in that moment she hadn't been able to unsee since. A person, just a person, under everything else. It was the most dangerous thing she could have seen. 3 days after the conversation in his office, someone slid an envelope under the door of her cousin's apartment at 7 in the morning. No name on it, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with her name at the top, then a dollar figure, large enough to make her breath catch, and 2 lines of text. You're closer to him than anyone has been in years. We just need information, employment records, schedule, nothing sensitive. Think about what you could do with this money. She stood in the hallway of her cousin's apartment in her pajamas, the envelope in her hand, the number on the page, and she stayed very still for a long moment. She thought about $43, about the pull-out couch, and the good bag, and the 8 months of starting over. She thought about the way Damien had said, I'm asking you to trust me with whatever you see. She folded the paper, put it back in the envelope, and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Someone left something at my home address, she said. A short silence. Don't touch it more than you already have, he said. I'm sending someone. Marcus? She kept her voice even. How did they get my home address? Another silence. Longer. We're looking into that, he said. She sat down on the edge of the pull-out couch and still folded out because she'd been awake since 6 and looked at the envelope in her hand. She had the very clear, very cold realization that whatever she had walked into 9 days ago when she stumbled through the wrong door had been much larger than she understood, and she was already too far in to walk away clean. She was at her desk by 8:15. Damien came in at 7:58. She heard the elevator, heard his footsteps, heard the specific quality of his movement that told her he already knew before he came through the door. He stopped at her desk, looked at her. Marcus called me, he said. I know. Elena, I'm here, she said. I came in. I'm at my desk. She looked up at him. I didn't take the money, and I didn't give them anything, and I'm here. Can we start with that and work forward? He looked at her for a moment. Something moved through his face that he didn't quite control. Yes, he said. We can start with that. He sat down in the chair across from her desk. Not his office, not behind his power and his windows. Just a chair on her side of the room. And he told her more than he'd told anyone in a very long time. He sat in the chair across from her desk like a man who had been carrying something heavy for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. And Elena watched him decide, she could actually see the moment he decided, to stop performing the version of himself that everyone else got. It wasn't dramatic. That was the thing about real moments. They rarely are. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped, and he looked at the floor for a second before he looked at her. Victor Kessler, he said. The name from the phone call, the one that wasn't on the list. He's not on the 11 names, Elena said. No, he's not. Damien's jaw tightened. Because he's not someone you turn away at the door. He's the reason the door exists. She waited. 18 years ago, I was 20 years old with no money, no connections, and an idea for a construction operation that I couldn't get anyone legitimate to back. He said it plainly, without self-pity or drama, just the flat shape of the facts. Victor Kessler backed it. He didn't do it out of generosity. He did it because he needed clean businesses to move money through, and I needed capital, and we both understood exactly what the arrangement was. How long did the arrangement last? Longer than it should have. He looked up at her. 7 years of active cooperation. Another 4 where I was slowly extracting myself, buying out the agreements, restructuring the financial channels, replacing the money flows with legitimate revenue. The last 4 years, I've been clean, auditable. Everything that runs through Blackwood Holdings now is real. But Victor doesn't accept the separation. Victor Kessler doesn't accept anything he didn't authorize. Damien's voice stayed level, but something underneath it went cold. He sees the company as his, not legally. There's nothing on paper. But in his mind, he built this. He fronted the money that started everything. And the fact that I've spent 11 years paying him back, building something that doesn't need him anymore, that's not liberation to him. That's theft. Elena was quiet for a moment. The man who came to the meeting on the 32nd floor, she said. The one I didn't recognize. Damien looked at her. You don't miss much. Who was he? A pause. Federal. Financial Crimes Division. They've been building a case against Kessler's network for 3 years. They came to me because my name is in the architecture of that network from 18 years ago, even if my active involvement ended years before that. The room held that for a moment. They want your cooperation, Elena said. They want my testimony and my records, in exchange for a structured agreement on my historical liability. He said it the way you say something you've been chewing on for days, something that has worn grooves into your thinking. If I cooperate, I expose everything. The early years, the arrangements, the names, including men who are considerably more dangerous than Victor Kessler. And if you don't, then they build the case without me, which takes longer, but I become part of what they're building instead of standing outside it. Elena sat back. When were you going to tell me any of this? She said. I'm telling you now. You're telling me now because someone found my home address and slid money under my door. She kept her voice even because losing it would not help anything. Not because you decided I deserved to know what I was walking into. He didn't flinch from that. She gave him credit for it. You're right, he said. I should have told you more earlier. I convinced myself I was protecting you by keeping you on the surface of it. Knowing the surface of something dangerous is more dangerous than knowing all of it, she said. If I'd understood what Victor Kessler was, I would have handled that phone call differently. I would have known what the timeline moved up actually meant. What would you have done differently? I wouldn't have written the message and left it on your desk, she said. I would have called you out of the meeting directly, because the timeline moved up isn't a scheduling note, it's a threat. He was very still. Yes, he said, it is. So what does the timeline moving up mean specifically? He stood up, went to the window, not the thinking posture, something more restless. He put one hand against the glass. Kessler knows about the federal contact, he said. I don't know how. I have 4 people who knew about that meeting, and I trust 3 of them completely. He paused. The 4th is someone I need to look at more carefully. Who's the 4th? He turned around. Raymond Cole, he said. She went cold. Raymond Cole, who came to this office 6 weeks ago, she said. Raymond Cole, who I turned away. Raymond Cole, who looked at me like he was filing me under useful information. Yes, he works for you. He worked adjacent to me. A contractor relationship, legal gray area. Damien's voice had gone to something flat and careful. He had limited access to operational information. Apparently limited was enough. Elena put both hands flat on her desk. You had me memorize a list of 11 names, she said slowly, and Raymond Cole wasn't on it, and Raymond Cole is the leak. I didn't know he was the leak when I gave you the list, but you knew he was someone I should know about. Silence. Damien, she used his name for only the 2nd time. It stopped him. Was Raymond Cole left off the list on purpose? The silence that followed was 3 seconds long and told her everything. It's complicated, he said. Uncomplicated. He looked at her for a long moment. The city behind him did nothing helpful. Cole has a sister, he said. She's in a financial situation that Kessler has been leveraging for 2 years. Cole isn't working against me by choice. He's being coerced. I kept him in a limited access position and off your radar because I was trying to give him a way out that didn't end with him in a federal case. And instead he gave Kessler the federal meeting. Yes, because your attempt to protect him gave him just enough access to do damage. Yes. Elena stood up. She didn't raise her voice. When she was truly angry, she had discovered this about herself in the last 2 years, in the rubble of everything that had fallen apart. She went quieter, not louder. You made a decision about someone's trustworthiness, she said, and that decision led directly to someone finding my home address, my personal address. Where I sleep. She paused. I need you to understand that those two things are connected. I know they are. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, the way you manage your exceptions and your complications and your attempts to protect people in gray areas, that cost me something this morning. It cost me the feeling that my home is safe. He crossed the room in 4 steps, not toward her, just away from the window, like he needed to move, and stopped at the edge of her desk. I know, he said. Elena, I know. Don't tell me it won't happen again. I won't. Good, because you can't promise that. She looked at him directly. What you can do is stop managing information around me for my own protection and start treating me like someone who is actually inside this, because I am inside it now. That envelope this morning put me inside it, so either you tell me everything or I cannot do this job safely. He held her gaze. Everything, he said. Everything. He pulled the second chair to her desk and sat down and talked for 40 minutes. She did not interrupt. She asked 3 questions, all of them precise, all of them the questions that moved the information forward rather than sideways. She listened the way she listened to everything, with the part of her brain that was always quietly organizing, finding the load-bearing structures inside what was being said. What she heard was this. Damian Blackwood had spent 11 years building a legitimate company on top of a foundation that had been partially criminal, and he had spent those 11 years trying to pour clean concrete over the bad ground underneath. And the bad ground was still there, and Victor Kessler was standing on top of it with a crowbar. The federal cooperation was his only real exit. But cooperation meant exposure, of the early years, of the arrangements, of men who did not accept exposure quietly. And Raymond Cole had just told Kessler it was coming. How long do you have, she asked when he finished. Before Kessler moves? Days. Maybe less. He ran a hand over his face, the first unguarded physical gesture she had ever seen from him. He'll try to destabilize the company first, create enough chaos that the federal case becomes complicated by the business fallout. Then he'll apply personal pressure. Personal meaning me. Personal meaning you, he said quietly. And anyone else he thinks I care about, which is a short list. The words sat between them. She was on a short list. She understood what that meant, and she understood that he had not said it to be tender. He had said it because it was operational information she needed to have. She chose to receive it that way. All right, she said. What do you need me to do? He blinked, just slightly. I'm going to need you to be somewhere safe, he said. That's not what I asked. Elena, I am not a liability to be managed, she said. I am the person who has been sitting 3 feet from the center of this for 2 months, and who knows your calendar, your contacts, your operational patterns, and apparently enough about you that someone thinks I'm worth bribing. She met his eyes. Use that. Don't warehouse me somewhere and call it protection. He stared at her. Then, slowly, something in his face shifted. Something that was not quite relief, but was in the neighborhood of it. Like a man who had been trying to do something alone for a very long time and had just been offered help by someone he actually trusted. The federal contact, he said. Agent Reyes, she needs to know about the envelope, about Cole. The timeline has moved and she needs to adjust the case strategy. You want me to contact her? I want you to come with me when I meet her, he said. You heard the phone call. You handled Cole at the door. Your account of the pattern of contact matters. She nodded once. When? Tonight. She has a standing secondary location for meetings like this. He stood. Go home and get what you need for 2 or 3 days. Don't take a car from the building. There's a car service Marcus uses. I'll have him send it. He paused. Do you have somewhere other than your cousin's apartment you could stay? I'll figure it out. Elena. His voice shifted. I'll figure it out. There's a property, it's clean. It's not connected to the company. Marcus uses it for exactly this. You'll be comfortable. I don't need comfortable, she said. I need safe, and I need to keep working. Both, he said. I can give you both. She picked up her bag. She looked at him once more before she left. Not the long, loaded look of a woman in a movie, just a straight look, the kind she'd been giving him since the first morning, the the kind that cost nothing, and apparently, she was understanding now, had started something she hadn't fully anticipated. "Damien," she said. "Yes. When this is over, when the cooperation is done and the federal case is closed and Kessler is handled, what does the company look like?" He thought about it, really thought, not the performance of thought. "Smaller," he said. "A lot of what we have now depends on relationships that go away when I cooperate. Revenue streams that are technically legal but exist because of who I've been connected to." "But clean." "Yes, clean." She nodded. "Then it's worth it," she said, and left. She did not see what happened to his face after the door closed. But Marcus did, because Marcus was in the north corridor when Elena walked past him, and he watched his employer stand alone in the outer office for a long moment, with an expression that Marcus had not seen on Damien Blackwood's face in approximately 15 years. He filed it away and said nothing. The meeting with Agent Reyes happened at 9:30 that night in the back room of a dry cleaning business on the west side of the city that smelled like chemicals and old steam and had a folding table with 4 chairs that looked like they'd been bought at a yard sale in 1987. Agent Reyes was 40-something, sharp-eyed, wearing a jacket that had seen better days and holding a coffee cup that had seen considerably worse. She looked at Elena when they walked in and then looked at Damien with the expression of a woman recalibrating. "You brought someone," she said. "She's why the timeline moved," Damien said. "Tell her." Elena told her, all of it, the phone call from Victor, the exact wording, the way she had written it down. Raymond Cole at the door, the envelope that morning, the dollar figure, the 2 lines of text. Reyes listened without interrupting, which Elena appreciated. When she finished, Reyes set down her coffee cup. "Cole," she said. "Cole," Damien confirmed. "I had Cole flagged as a possible vulnerability 6 weeks ago." Reyes's voice was flat. "I recommended he be removed from any proximity to this operation." Damien said nothing. His jaw was tight. "You didn't remove him," Reyes said, "because of the sister." "Because of the sister. And now Kessler knows about this meeting and the envelope went to her address." Reyes looked at Elena. "How did they get your home address?" "I don't know," Elena said. "I'd like to." "We'll look at it." But Reyes made a note. "The good news is that Cole knowing about the federal contact doesn't destroy the case. It accelerates it. If Kessler knows we're moving, he'll move first. And when he moves, he'll expose the network in ways that actually help us." "He'll move against me personally," Damien said. "Yes, which is why we need to move faster." Reyes looked between them. "I need your full records by end of week. The financial architecture from the beginning. Every name, every arrangement, every channel. No more partial disclosure." "You'll have it." "And her," Reyes nodded at Elena. "She needs to be in a secure location that Kessler can't access." "Already arranged," Damien said. "I make my own arrangements," Elena said. Both of them looked at her. "I'll use the property Marcus provides," she said, looking at Damien. "But I'm not stopping work. I have full access to the operational calendar and the correspondence systems. I can work remotely and nothing flags as unusual. If I suddenly disappear from the daily pattern, that's a signal." Reyes looked at her for a moment. Then she looked at Damien. "She's right," Reyes said. "Maintain the pattern. If Kessler is watching the company's operational signals, and he is, a disruption is information." Damien looked at Elena with the expression she was beginning to understand meant he was revising upward again. "Fine," he said. "You work remotely. Full access. Marcus has eyes on the property. I don't need a babysitter. You need someone who can respond in under 3 minutes if something happens," he said. "That's not a babysitter. That's math." She couldn't argue with math. They left the dry cleaning place at 10:45. The city was doing its late-night version. Quieter, more honest, the performance of the daytime stripped back to the people who actually lived in it. Damien walked her to the car Marcus had sent. He stopped at the door. "Elena," he said. His voice was different in the night air, less controlled. No, that wasn't it. More honest. Like the building and the office and the 60 floors of glass were what required control, and this, out here, was what was underneath. I know, she said. She didn't know exactly what she was responding to. It didn't matter. She knew. He opened the car door. She got in. He closed it, and she watched him through the window as the car pulled away. Standing on the sidewalk in the late-night city, hands in his pockets, watching her go. She made herself look forward. She got to the property. A townhouse on a quiet street, clean and plain and completely unremarkable, which was the point. At 11:15, Marcus had texted her the code. She let herself in, found a bedroom on the second floor, sat on the edge of the bed. She was not a person who cried easily. She had learned not to in the last 2 years because there had been too many things worth crying about, and if she started, she wasn't always sure she'd stop. She did not cry now. She sat on the edge of the bed and thought about everything Damien had told her, and everything Reyes had said, and the dollar figure on that piece of paper, and Raymond Cole's eyes when he looked at her at the door, filing her under useful information. She thought about a short list. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the operational calendar and started working, because the daily pattern had to hold, and because working was the thing she knew how to do when everything else was moving underneath her. At 1 in the morning, a message came through the internal system. Damien's account. No subject line. 4 words. You doing okay? She stared at it for a moment. She thought about professionalism and boundaries and the job and the $43 that felt like a lifetime ago. She typed back, working, you should sleep. His response came in under a minute. 4 hours. That's still not enough, she typed. A pause. Then, no, it isn't. She closed the laptop. She lay back on the bed with her shoes still on and stared at the ceiling of a house she'd never been in before, in a situation she'd never anticipated, connected to a man she'd walked into by accident 2 months ago. She had come to Blackwood Holdings with nothing, a bag, a resume, and the specific desperation of someone who has already lost everything once and cannot afford to lose again. She had not planned for this. She had not planned for any of it. The ceiling was plain white. The room smelled like clean linen and nothing personal. Somewhere across the city, Victor Kessler was adjusting his timeline. Somewhere across the city, Raymond Cole was living with what he'd done. Somewhere across the city, Damien Blackwood was probably at his window, staring at the city, not sleeping. Elena Marlowe, who had accidentally smiled at the wrong man in the wrong office and accidentally walked into the center of something much larger than herself, stared at the ceiling and understood, clearly, without drama, the way she understood most things, that the moment the car had driven away and she had made herself look forward instead of back, something had already changed that she was not going to be able to change back. She wasn't sure she wanted to. That was the most dangerous thing of all. The call came at 4:57 in the morning. Marcus. His voice had the particular flatness of a man delivering information he wished he didn't have. We have a problem, he said. She was already sitting up. Cole, Marcus said. He's gone. His apartment, his car, his phone, all dead. He ran. She processed that. When? Sometime between midnight and 3, which means Kessler knows he's burned and pulled him out. Which means Kessler is moving now, she said. Not days. Now. Yes. Does Damien know? I'm calling you first, Marcus said, and the fact that he had called her first told her exactly where she now stood in the operational order of things. Because there's something else. Cole's access to the calendar system. It was broader than we thought. We're running an audit now, but it looks like he had read access to the full scheduling archive. The full scheduling archive. 6 weeks of Damien's movements. Every meeting, every location, every pattern. She was already out of bed and reaching for her shoes. Marcus, she said, the federal meeting tonight. Reyes's location? Wasn't in the calendar system, Marcus said. That was handled off system. She exhaled. But everything else, she said. Everything else, Marcus confirmed. Kessler has a map. She stood in the plain white room in the safe house with her shoes half on, and understood in the way that real understanding arrives. Not like a revelation, but like a door finally opening into a room you already suspected was there. That the story she had walked into 2 months ago was not a story about a company or a federal case, or even a man trying to build something clean on top of something dirty. It was a story about what happens when the walls you've built to survive finally come down, and who is standing next to you when they do. She tied her shoes. "Tell Damien I'm on my way in," she said. The car Marcus sent was already waiting when Elena came out of the townhouse at 5:12 in the morning. The driver didn't say anything. She didn't ask him to. The city at that hour was stripped down to its working parts. Delivery trucks, early commuters, streetlights still running against a sky that hadn't decided yet between night and morning. She sat in the back and looked at her phone. 3 messages from Damien, all sent within the last 20 minutes, each one shorter than the last. "Cole is gone. Stay at the property. Elena, stay where you are." She typed back, "I'm in the car. Don't argue." She watched the typing indicator appear and disappear twice, then, "Marcus is meeting you downstairs." Marcus was at the building service entrance, not the lobby. He was wearing the same suit he'd probably had on yesterday, and he had the look of a man who had not slept and was not planning to. "He's going to be angry," Marcus said, falling into step beside her. "He can be angry and also have help," she said. "Where are we?" "Conference room B, 52nd floor. Reyes is already there. She pulled her team in at 4. "How many people know about Cole's access to the archive?" "The audit team. Reyes, me, and now you." "Not Damien yet." "Damien knows Cole ran. He doesn't know the archive scope yet." Marcus paused at the elevator. "I wanted to look at the full picture before I put it in front of him." She looked at him. "Because the full picture is bad." "The full picture," Marcus said quietly, "is that Kessler has had 6 weeks of Damien's movement patterns, his regular locations, his meeting schedules, and the names of everyone he meets with regularly." The elevator arrived. "Including mine," she said. "Including yours." They rode up in silence. The conference room on the 52nd floor was the organized chaos of a rapid response. Laptops open, coffee cups at varying stages of empty, Rhea standing at the head of the table with her jacket off, and the look of someone who had shifted from building a case to running one. Damien was at the far end of the room. He looked up when she came in. His eyes went from her face to Marcus and back, and she watched him process the fact that she had not stayed at the property and make the decision not to fight about it right now. "Tell me the archive scope," he said to Marcus. Marcus told him. The room went quiet in a specific way. Everyone in it suddenly focused on anything except Damien's face. Elena watched him absorb it. She watched the muscle in his jaw tighten and release. She watched him put both hands flat on the table and look at the surface for a moment, the way she sometimes put her hands flat when she needed something solid. 6 weeks, he said. Yes. He has my patterns for 6 weeks. Yes. Damien lifted his head and looked at Reyes. He knows where I move. He knows my regular locations. He knows the building's operational schedule. Yes, Reyes said, which is why we're changing all of it, starting now. Your office on 58 is dark until further notice. Your regular routes are suspended. We're moving you to a secondary location that has never appeared in any calendar or correspondence. And the company? Needs to look operational, which is where she comes in. Reyes looked at Elena. You said last night that maintaining the pattern was important, that a disruption was a signal. Yes, to Dick. Can you run the operational pattern from a remote system without being in the building? I've been doing it from the townhouse since 11 last night, Elena said. Nothing flagged. Reyes nodded. Then that's what you do. You run the visible pattern. Damien's public-facing calendar shows normal activity. His office shows normal scheduling. Anyone watching the company's operational signals sees a normal day. While the real operation runs underneath, Damien said. While we finalize the cooperation agreement and get ahead of Kessler's timeline, Reyes said, we move fast enough and we control the sequence. He moves first and we're reactive. She paused. I don't want to be reactive. Damien looked at Elena. It was a brief look. A few seconds. But in those seconds, something passed between them that had nothing to do with the conference room or the case or the 6 weeks of compromised calendar data. He was asking if she was all right. She gave him a small, level nod. He turned back to Reyes. What do you need first? He said. They worked for 4 hours straight. Elena ran the visible calendar from a laptop at the corner of the conference table, processing the routine morning traffic of Damien's public-facing schedule, confirmation emails, adjusted meeting requests, the ordinary administrative pulse of a large company starting its day. While Reyes's team worked the case architecture, and Damien sat with two federal attorneys going through financial records that went back 18 years. She did not look at what was in those records. That was not her job, and she had enough to manage. What she did notice, in the peripheral way she noticed things, was what the process cost him. Every document he reviewed, every name he confirmed, every arrangement he laid out for the federal attorneys, she could see it in his posture across the room. The specific weight of accounting for years of decisions you can't take back. He did not hesitate, and he did not qualify, and he did not try to minimize, which she thought probably mattered to the attorneys more than he realized. He just told them what happened, in order, with the particular precision of a man who had rehearsed this in his own head many times before this room existed. At 9:15, Marcus appeared at her elbow. "We have movement," he said quietly. She looked up. "What kind?" "A vehicle that has been parked on the east side of the building since 6 this morning. Plates registered to a shell company that our security team flagged as a Kessler-adjacent entity." He paused. "It's not doing anything, just sitting." "He's watching the building," she said. "He's confirming the pattern, checking that operations look normal." "Then they need to stay normal." She looked across the room at Damien. "Don't tell him yet. It will pull his attention, and he needs to finish the records." Marcus studied her for a moment. "You know I technically don't take direction from you," he said. "You also called me before you called him this morning," she said. A pause. "I'll monitor the vehicle," he said, and walked away. She went back to the calendar. At 10:40 the vehicle moved. It drove around the block and parked again on the north side. At 11 it drove away. At 11:18 her phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at it for 1 second, then answered. "Ms. Marlowe." The voice was smooth, unhurried, and she recognized it immediately because she had heard it once before through a phone line and filed it under things that felt cold. Victor Kessler. She did not react visibly. She stood up from the conference table and walked toward the corridor, keeping her pace normal. "You have the wrong number," she said. "I don't think I do." A slight pause, like a man settling into a comfortable chair. "I think I have exactly the right number. You're smart enough to know that, which is why you're already moving away from the room so no one panics." She stopped in the corridor. She looked back through the glass at the conference room. Damien had his back to her, still with the attorneys. "What do you want?" she said. Not a question. A demand, kept flat. "I want to have a conversation that saves everyone a significant amount of trouble," Kessler said. "Including you." "I'm listening." "You're in a room right now with federal agents and a man who is about to hand them enough information to put a significant number of people in prison." He said it pleasantly, like he was describing a weather forecast. "Some of those people are going to feel very strongly about that. I want to offer you an alternative." "I already got your envelope," she said. "I didn't take that offer either." "That was a crude approach," he said. "I apologize for it. You're not someone who responds to crude approaches." "I know that now." A pause. "What I'm offering now is different. Walk away from the building. Today. Take nothing. Tell no one. Simply remove yourself from this situation. In return, nothing that happens in the next 72 hours involves you." "And if I don't?" Silence. Just long enough to be its own sentence. "And then you become part of what happens," he said. "Not because I have anything against you personally, because you're the thing that matters most to him, and I need him to understand what's at stake." The thing that matters most to him. She kept her voice completely level. "I'll need time to think about it." "You have until noon." The call ended. She stood in the corridor for exactly 4 seconds. Then she went back into the conference room, walked directly to Marcus, and said very quietly, "Kessler just called my cell. He knows I'm in this building right now. He's watching in real time." Marcus went absolutely still. "The vehicle," he said. "Someone in the vehicle had eyes on the building entrance. They saw me arrive this morning." She handed him her phone. "The call is in the log. He gave me a noon deadline to walk away." "What did you tell him?" "That I needed time to think." Marcus looked at her. "Did you?" "No," she said. I needed him to think I was considering it, so he waits until noon instead of moving now. She held his gaze. We have approximately 47 minutes. What can Reyes do with 47 minutes? Marcus picked up his own phone and walked toward Reyes. Elena turned around. Damien was looking at her from across the room. He had turned at some point, she didn't know when, and he was watching her with an expression she hadn't seen before. Something had moved past the control he usually maintained and left something raw in its place. He had seen the phone. He had seen her walk to the corridor. He hadn't heard the call, but he had read the aftermath on her face before she got it back under control. She crossed the room to him. Kessler called me, she said quietly. Something went through his expression like a current. He gave me a deadline to walk away, she said. Noon. I told him I was considering it. Elena. Damien. She kept her voice low and even. I need you to finish the records. Right now. Everything. Give Reyes what she needs to move before noon because Kessler is going to act when I don't walk out of this building. He called you, Damien said, and his voice had dropped to something she had not heard from him before. Something past controlled, past professional, something with actual heat underneath it. He has your cell number. He has a lot of things, she said. Cole gave him 6 weeks, but he doesn't have what's in those records yet, and if you finish them in the next 40 minutes, Reyes can start the legal sequence and Kessler loses his window. He stared at her. You're not scared, he said. I'm terrified, she said. I'm doing it anyway. Finish the records. She turned away. His hand caught her wrist. Just for a second, just fingers around her wrist. And she stopped. After this, he said. Just those 2 words. She didn't turn around. After this, she said, and kept walking. He went back to the attorneys. She went back to her laptop and ran the visible calendar and watched the clock. The next 38 minutes were the longest of her life, which was saying something because she had had some long minutes in the last 2 years. She processed emails with her hands steady and her mind split in 2. One half managing the routine traffic of a normal business morning. The other half tracking the room behind her, the clock on her screen, the corridor outside. At 11:49, Damien said, That's everything. The room shifted. Reyes's team moved. 2 attorneys started on phones. Reyes herself opened a laptop and started a sequence that Elena recognized as the beginning of a formal legal filing process. At 11:54, Marcus came to her shoulder again. The vehicle is back, he said. North side. 2 vehicles now. How many people? Can't confirm. Windows are dark. Reyes, Elena said, loud enough to carry. Reyes looked up. He's not waiting until noon, Elena said. He's already positioned. Reyes was on her phone in 3 seconds, calling someone Elena didn't know, using words Elena didn't have context for. But the effect on the room was immediate. 2 of Reyes's people moved to the corridor, hands going to places that made clear they were carrying weapons, and Marcus put a hand on Elena's shoulder and said, Away from the windows. I'm nowhere near a window, she said. Further from them, he said, and his voice had changed in the way voices change when a situation moves from tense to active. She picked up her laptop and moved to the interior wall. Damien appeared beside her. He had crossed the room without her seeing him move, which was how he moved when he wasn't performing composure, quickly, quietly, with the particular efficiency of someone who had at some point learned to move through dangerous spaces. Stay close to me, he said. I'm fine. Elena. The way he said it. Not commanding, not asking. Something in between that she didn't have a word for. Please. She stayed close. What happened next happened in fragments, the way real chaos always does. Not the clean sequence of a story, but the jagged overlap of multiple things at once. The building's security system triggered on the north entrance at 11:58. Not a breach. A perimeter alert. The kind that meant someone was testing the access points. Marcus was on his radio. Reyes's people were in the corridor. The 2 attorneys had stopped their calls and were looking at each other with the expression of people who had signed up for legal work and were suddenly somewhere else entirely. Damien's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face did something she had never seen it do. He answered it. Victor, he said. The name dropped into the room like something heavy. Elena could not hear the other side of the call. She watched Damien's face and read what she could. Whatever Kessler said in the first 10 seconds made Damien's expression go completely flat in the specific way she now understood meant he was controlling something extreme. "Say that again," Damien said. His voice was so quiet it was almost nothing. He listened for another moment. "You're going to regret this," he said, and ended the call. He turned to Marcus. "He has the building," Damien said. "Not inside. The structure. He bought the management company's debt 3 months ago. It's a legal hold, engineered, but it gives him grounds to request a premises evacuation through city channels. He's already filed." He paused. "We have 20 minutes before city compliance officers show up, and everyone in this building is required to leave." Reyes swore under her breath. "The filing sequence," Elena said. Everyone looked at her. "Is it started?" "We need another 40 minutes to complete it," Reyes said. "Can it run remotely, off-site?" "With the right system access, yes." "Then we don't need this building," Elena said. "We need to be somewhere else with a working connection before the evacuation order lands." And the filing continues. She looked at Reyes. "Is there anywhere your team can operate from in the next 20 minutes that isn't this building?" Reyes looked at her team. The look that passed between them confirmed yes without words. "Then we move," Elena said. "Elena?" Damien started. "Kessler wants us out of this building," she said. "Fine, we leave. But we don't stop. We keep the sequence running from wherever we go and we file before his people can adjust." She looked at Damien directly. "He thinks getting us out of this building breaks the momentum. It doesn't, unless we let it." The room was very still for 1 second. Then Reyes said, "She's right. Pack what you need. We have a secondary location." She was already moving, already on her phone, already reorienting. 15 minutes. The room became controlled motion. Elena closed her laptop, tucked it under her arm, picked up her bag. Marcus was organizing Reyes's team toward the service exit. The attorneys had their own cases and were moving with a speed that suggested they'd practiced for exactly this kind of unplanned relocation. Damien was at her side. "The secondary location," he said quietly, to her only. "Kessler doesn't know about it, but he knows about you." "I know. He's going to use you. Whatever happens next, he's going to come at me through you. That's what the call was." She stopped walking. She turned and looked at him fully. In the middle of the corridor with Marcus and the attorneys and Reyes's team moving around them like a river around 2 rocks. "What did he say?" she asked. "On the call. Exactly." Damien held her gaze. "He said he'd let the federal case proceed," Damien said. "He said he'd accept the cooperation, accept the exposure, accept the consequences." He paused. "In exchange for one thing." She waited. "You," Damien said. "He wants you removed from my life, permanently. His word." His voice stayed controlled, and something behind it didn't. "He said if I care enough about one secretary to let her change everything, I should care enough to know what that costs." The corridor noise continued around them. Someone called Marcus's name. The evacuation clock was running. Elena looked at him. "He thinks I'm a lever," she said. "He thinks everyone is a lever," Damien said. "He's usually right." "What did you say to him?" Damien was quiet for 1 beat. "I told him he'd regret it," he said. "That's not an answer." "No," he said. "It's not." His hand moved, almost, nearly, the beginning of a gesture toward her face, and stopped. Not because he didn't mean it, because they were in a corridor with 12 people moving around them, and a 20-minute window and a man with a legal hold on the building, and everything that had been building between them for 2 months was trying to arrive at the worst possible moment. "Damien," she said. "I know," he said. "We move first," she said. "We file first. And then, he said. Marcus called his name sharply from the end of the corridor. They moved. The service exit put them in a loading bay at the back of the building, cold concrete and the smell of exhaust and morning still not quite finished becoming day. 2 black vehicles waited, not the company cars, something less recognizable. Reyes's team split between them. Marcus took the lead vehicle. Elena moved toward the second vehicle. Damien caught up beside her. They got in. The door closed. The vehicle pulled out of the loading bay, turned east, and joined the morning traffic like nothing was happening, like it was just another car on just another morning, which was the most important performance any of them would give today. Elena opened her laptop on her knees. The connection found a signal. The filing system was still running. 31 minutes to completion, she said. Can we stay ahead of him for 31 minutes? Damien asked. She looked at the screen, then at him. Watch me, she said. But the first vehicle, Marcus, Reyes, two attorneys, had been in traffic for less than 4 minutes when Elena's phone lit up. Marcus. She answered immediately. We have a tail, Marcus said. 2 vehicles, professional interval. They picked us up leaving the loading bay. Her chest tightened. Us too? She said. A pause. Marcus checking with someone. Can't confirm. Your vehicle may be clean. Or they split resources, Damien said quietly, reading her face. She looked out the rear window. Traffic. Normal morning traffic. Or not. Marcus, she said. If they have both vehicles, they're not trying to stop the filing. They already know they can't stop it. Then what are they doing? Marcus said. She looked at Damien. The answer arrived in her mind with the particular clarity of something obvious that you weren't looking at directly. Kessler knew the filing would complete. He had probably known for hours. The evacuation, the vehicles, the tail, none of it was designed to stop the federal process. It was designed to get Damien into an uncontrolled location, away from federal oversight, away from lawyers and agents and conference rooms, somewhere that a conversation could happen that had nothing to do with legal proceedings. Somewhere a different kind of pressure could be applied. Marcus, she said, don't stop moving. Don't go to the secondary location. Take a route that keeps you in dense traffic and public spaces. She paused. The tail isn't trying to intercept you. It's trying to see where you lead them. A brief silence. She's right, Reyes's voice came through. Reyes had been listening. We do not go to the secondary location. We go somewhere public and we stay there until the filing completes. Understood, Marcus said. The call stayed open. Elena looked at Damien. The vehicle was moving east through morning traffic, the city fully awake around them now, ordinary and indifferent. When the filing completes, she said, Kessler loses the legal architecture. The cooperation agreement activates and his network is exposed. He can't undo it. I know. So whatever he does in the next 28 minutes is his last move, Damien said. Yes. He looked at her. The morning light through the vehicle window was doing something ordinary to his face. Just light, just a man, just the tired and complicated and real person she had first seen at his window 2 months ago and told he looked like he needed sleep. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it. Every part you walked into because I didn't tell you enough, soon enough. I know you are. That's not... He stopped, started again. I need you to know it's not just professional. The sorry. It's not just because you work for me. She looked at him. I know that too, she said. The vehicle hit a red light and stopped. And in the stillness of that stopped moment, with the filing running on her laptop and Marcus's voice a murmur on her phone and the city moving past the windows like it always did, indifferent to everything that was about to change, the rear window shattered. Not glass falling, glass exploding inward, a targeted impact, and before Elena could process the sound, she was already being pulled down by Damien's arm across her shoulders, his body angling between her and the broken window, her laptop hitting the floor, the phone skidding. The driver was already accelerating through the red light, voice sharp on his radio. Elena had her face against the seat, Damien's weight partly over her, and she could feel his breathing, fast, controlled, the breathing of someone managing adrenaline by force of will. Are you hit? He said into her hair. No, she said. Are you? A pause that lasted 1 second too long. Damien. She pushed up against him. Are you hit? It's minor, he said. She got upright. His left arm, the sleeve of his jacket, dark fabric, darker now near the shoulder. That is not minor, she said. It's a graze, he said. Elena, do not tell me it's fine, she said, and her voice came out with a shake in it that she hadn't expected and couldn't stop. Not fear for herself, something sharper than that. Do not tell me you're fine when you're bleeding. He looked at her. The vehicle was moving fast now, the driver navigating with the controlled urgency of someone trained for exactly this. Marcus's voice coming through the phone from the floor asking for a status. Reyes in the background. Damien was looking at her with his jacket sleeve going dark at the shoulder, and an expression on his face that had nothing managed or controlled left in it. Just him. Just the actual person. Looking at her. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'm not fine." She picked up her phone from the floor. "Marcus, we need a medical contact at the next stop. Damien's been hit. Left shoulder, appears to be a graze, but needs assessment." Marcus's voice came back clipped and immediate with instructions for the driver. She looked at her laptop. Still running, still connected. 21 minutes to completion. She reached down and picked it up from the floor and set it back on her knees and looked at the screen. Then she reached over with her right hand without looking away from the screen and found Damien's right hand where it rested on the seat between them, and she put her hand over his. He turned his hand over and held hers. Neither of them said anything. The vehicle moved through the city. The filing ran, the clock counted down, and somewhere ahead of them, Victor Kessler was making his last calculation, not knowing yet that the woman he had tried to use as a lever was the same woman who, 21 minutes from now, would be the reason he had run out of time. The vehicle stopped in the parking structure of a hotel on the west side of the city at 7 minutes past noon. Not a Blackwood property, not anywhere connected to anything, just a mid-range hotel with a parking structure and enough foot traffic that 2 cars pulling in fast didn't register as unusual. Marcus was already there. He had his door open before the vehicle fully stopped. Elena got out first. Damien came out behind her, moving carefully, his right hand pressed to his left shoulder through the jacket. The blood had soaked through the fabric in a dark stain the size of her palm. Not small. Not a graze, whatever he had said. "I need to see it," she said. "Inside," Marcus said. They went up 2 floors by stairwell. The elevator was too exposed, Marcus said, and nobody argued with him. And into a room at the end of a corridor that Marcus had clearly arranged in advance because he had the key card already, and the room had a first aid kit on the table that was considerably more comprehensive than anything a hotel would stock. Damien sat on the edge of the bed. Elena pulled a chair in front of him without asking anyone's permission, and Marcus handed her the kit without being asked. "I've done this before," Marcus said, reaching for the kit. "So have I," Elena said, which was not entirely true, but close enough. She had taken a first aid course 6 years ago, working for an executive who traveled to unstable regions and required his personal assistant to be certified. She had never expected to use it. She helped Damien out of his jacket. He was quiet throughout, which she was learning was what pain looked like on him. Not sound, just a controlled stillness. The wound was a graze. He had been right about that. But a graze at that angle had cut a 3-inch line across the top of his shoulder, and it was deep enough to be serious and bleeding enough to require pressure and closure. She worked. She did not talk while she worked because talking would have meant using concentration she needed elsewhere. She cleaned it and she closed it with the steri strips in the kit, and she applied pressure with the gauze, and she was aware of him watching her face the entire time, but she didn't meet his eyes until she was done. When she looked up, he was closer than she expected. The bed put him at her eye level, seated, with her in the chair, and there was very little distance between them. "Thank you," he said. "How does it feel?" "Like I got grazed by a bullet," he said, and there was the nearest thing to dry humor she had heard from him since she'd known him. "Good," she said. "You should feel exactly that bad." Something moved through his face. Her phone rang. Reyes. She answered it. "Filing completed at 12:03, Reyes said. "Cooperation agreement is active and filed. We have federal jurisdiction over the Kessler network as of 7 minutes ago." A pause. "It's done, Ms. Marlowe." Elena breathed out. "And Kessler," she said. "We have an intercept team at his primary location. He's been watching his lawyer's phones light up for the last 10 minutes. Reyes's voice had the controlled satisfaction of someone who had been working toward a moment for 3 years. "He knows. He knows it's over. Is he going to run?" "He's going to try," Reyes said. "That's fine. Running is confirmation. We have everything we need whether he runs or walks into a federal building voluntarily." "And Raymond Cole?" Cole surfaced at 4 this morning at a bus station in the Western District. One of our field agents spotted him. He's in protective custody. A brief pause. His sister's financial situation is being addressed as part of the cooperation agreement. That was Damien's condition. Elena looked at Damien. He was watching her. She thought about the Raymond Cole decision, the one he'd made wrong, the one that had led to the envelope under her door and 6 weeks of compromised data. She thought about the fact that even inside that mistake, he had been trying to protect someone, that even the bad calls he made had this particular shape to them, the shape of someone who remembered what it was to have no one in your corner. "Tell Reyes thank you," Damien said. Elena relayed it. "Tell him we're even," Reyes said. "For now." The call ended. Marcus was standing at the window, looking out at a parking structure view that had nothing scenic about it. He turned when the call ended. "It's done," Elena said. Marcus nodded once, the kind of nod that a man gives when he has been holding something tense for a long time and is allowing himself very carefully to set it down. "I'm going to make some calls," he said. He looked at Damien. "You need a hospital." "I need 20 minutes," Damien said. Marcus looked at Elena. 20 minutes, she confirmed. Marcus left without another word and pulled the door closed behind him. And suddenly the room was just the two of them and the first aid kit and the morning outside the window and everything that had been building since a woman with a good bag and $43 had walked through the wrong door. Damien looked at her. "You ran the filing from a moving vehicle while I was bleeding on the seat next to you," he said. "The filing wasn't going to run itself." "Elena." "I know," she said. She was still in the chair in front of him, close enough that she could see the tiredness in his face that she had first noticed 2 months ago through an accidentally opened door. The tiredness that lived behind his eyes and had been there for years. It was still there. It was probably always going to be there. Some kinds of tired don't leave completely, they just get lighter. "The company's going to take damage," he said. "From the cooperation. The relationships that end when the agreement activates. There are revenue lines, partnerships, clients who are going to disappear. The legitimate business is strong enough to survive it, but the first year is going to be difficult." "I know," she said again. "I'm telling you because—" He stopped. "I'm telling you because what comes next, the shape of what I'm trying to build, is different from what you were hired into. And I need you to know that before you make any decisions about whether you stay." She looked at him. "You're asking if I'm going to leave," she said. "I'm giving you the information to make the decision," he said, "which is what you've always asked me to do." She almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. "The Blackwood Holdings I'm walking back into," she said, "is smaller, cleaner, and actually worth working for. The version I walked into 2 months ago had things underneath it I didn't know about and you hadn't fully accounted for." She paused. "This version is harder, but it's honest. That's not a reason to leave. It's actually the reason to stay." He was very still. "I also," she said, "am not only making this decision about the company." The room held that sentence. He reached out with his right hand, his good arm, and his fingers found hers on the arm of the chair. Not the urgent grip from the vehicle. Something slower, something that asked rather than held. She turned her hand over and let him. "I've been thinking about the first morning," he said. "The briefing. 3 items. You standing at your new desk with the plastic film still on the monitor and telling me exactly what you needed from me and exactly what you'd give in return. I remember. I thought you were the most direct person I'd ever met," he said. "And I'd been surrounded by people my entire career who were never direct, who said what they needed to say to get what they wanted and nothing else." He looked at her. "You said what you meant." "I always do." "I know. It took me a while to trust it because I didn't have a category for it." His thumb moved against her hand just slightly. "And then you told me I looked tired, and you meant that too, and I stood at my window for 2 minutes after your door closed, and I couldn't tell you why." "I can tell you why," she said. "I know you can," he said. "You always can." Outside the window, the city was doing its midday version, fully awake, indifferent to particular mornings in particular hotel rooms, moving at the pace of things that don't know they're supposed to slow down. I need to say something, Elena said, and I need to say it before Marcus comes back and we go to a hospital and the next 48 hours happen and I don't get a quiet moment to say it. He waited. I walked into this building with nothing, she said, and I mean that literally, $43 and a bag and a job I needed to survive. And that was fine. I knew how to survive. I'd been doing it. She looked at him directly. What I did not plan for was you, not the money or the position or any of it. You, the actual person that I kept seeing underneath everything else. And I tried for 2 months to keep it professional and filed away, because I am not a person who makes comfortable decisions, and you are not a simple situation. I'm really not, he said. But I'm also not going to pretend, now that we're on the other side of this, that the reason I got in the car this morning instead of staying at the townhouse was entirely professional. He looked at her. Why did you get in the car? He said. Because you needed me, she said. Not the assistant, me. His hand tightened on hers. Yes, he said. That's true. And I needed to be there, she said, which is a different thing, which is what I'm telling you. He leaned forward, slowly, carefully, the injured shoulder making him move with more deliberateness than usual, and his forehead came to rest against hers. Just that. Just the contact of two people who had been through something together and were still here. She felt him breathe. After this, he said again, his 2 words, their 2 words now. After this, said. Marcus knocked twice and opened the door, with the timing of a man who had specifically waited for the knock to be necessary. Hospital, he said. Now, non-negotiable. Damien lifted his head. He looked at Marcus. He looked at Elena. Fine, he said. The hospital was a private medical facility that Marcus had used before. Quiet, professional, no questions about how a man came to have a bullet graze on his shoulder, which was not the kind of question anyone in the building seemed interested in asking. The physician who treated Damien was efficient and thorough and used 8 stitches and said he needed rest and limited use of the arm for 2 weeks, which Damien acknowledged and Elena noted privately he would not comply with. They were there for 3 hours. During those 3 hours, Reyes called twice with updates. Victor Kessler had not run. This surprised everyone except Elena, who had thought about it during the hospital wait and had decided that Kessler was too controlled a man to run. Running was admission, and admission was the one thing a man like that would refuse as long as any alternative existed. What he had done instead was call his lawyers and issue a public statement through his companies denying cooperation with any federal investigation, which was the move of a man buying time. Reyes said it didn't matter. The cooperation agreement didn't require Kessler's participation. It required Damien's, and it had it. Raymond Cole was formally entered into a protection program. His sister's debt, the leverage Kessler had used to coerce him, was addressed through a financial mechanism that Reyes declined to detail, but which Cole's attorney confirmed was resolved. Elena thought about Cole. She thought about a man who had done a wrong thing for a real reason, which was different from a man who had done a wrong thing because he wanted to. The difference didn't erase the damage, but it mattered. She thought about how many decisions in this whole story had that shape, the shape of someone trying to protect something and miscalculating the cost. Damien, 18 years ago. Cole, 6 months ago. Her fiancé, 3 years ago, though she was willing to admit that one was a simpler story with less structural integrity. People did things for reasons. The reasons didn't always save them from the consequences. What you did after the consequences, that was the part that mattered. They left the hospital at 4 in the afternoon. The city was in its late-day version, the light going amber and long, traffic building toward the evening rush. Marcus drove. She and Damien sat in the back. His shoulder was properly dressed now, and he was moving with more care than this morning, but he was not behaving like a man who had been told to rest. He had his phone in his right hand and was reviewing something from Reyes that had come through during the stitches. "Stop," she said. He looked up. "You were told 2 weeks of limited activity," she said. "It has been 40 minutes. The company—" "Marcus," she said. "I'll handle it," Marcus said from the front, without being asked for specifics. Damien looked at Marcus, then at Elena. "Both of you," he said. "Yes," she said. "Put the phone down." He put the phone down. He leaned his head back against the seat and looked at the ceiling of the vehicle, and she could see, in the particular quality of stillness that settled over him, the exhaustion finally being allowed to come in. The real exhaustion, the kind that had been underneath the 4 hours of sleep and the late nights and the 18 years of building something on ground that was never fully stable. She did not say anything. She let him be tired. After a while, he said, without lifting his head, "The property on Clement Street, the one I've been planning for 3 years, the community development project. I never started it because I couldn't get the funding clean enough." "I know about it," she said. "I read the proposal in the archive files." He turned his head to look at her. "Of course you did." "It's a good proposal," she said. "The mixed-use development, the resident equity structure. It's genuinely good. It just needed a different financial foundation." "Which it has now," he said. "The cooperation agreement opens certain federal partnership channels that weren't available before." "I know. I want to start it," he said, "when the dust settles. As the first thing Blackwood Holdings does that is entirely, from the ground up, the kind of thing I wanted to build." She looked at him. "You'll need a project coordinator," she said. "Someone who understands both the operational and the community-facing sides, who can manage the administrative structure while you handle the development architecture." "I'll need someone I trust," he said. "You have someone you trust," she said. He held her gaze. "Is that a professional offer?" he said. "It's both," she said. "Like most things between us." A small, quiet thing happened on his face that she had not seen there before. Not the almost smile she had been cataloging since the first morning. Something that went further than that. Something that arrived completely and stayed. She thought it was probably the real one. The smile he didn't hand out for free. She thought it looked very good on him. "Both," he said. "All right." Marcus said nothing from the front, but his shoulders had a different quality. Slightly less coiled, slightly more at rest. And Elena filed that away as the nearest thing to approval Marcus would ever visibly demonstrate. The weeks that followed were not simple. Nothing about them was simple, and she would have been suspicious if it had been. The cooperation agreement activated fully and took with it, as Damien had said, a significant portion of the company's revenue relationships. Clients who had been connected to the Kessler network through layers of legitimate-looking partnership ended those partnerships when the federal activity became public. 3 subsidiaries had to be restructured. 1 was sold. The company went from 60 floors of black glass and implied power to 31 floors of the same building, renegotiated lease, smaller staff, and a balance sheet that was genuinely clean for the first time in its history. It was harder. It was also visibly different. Something in the texture of how people moved through the building, how meetings ran, how decisions got made. The performative fear that Elena had felt on her first day in the lobby, the specific quality of people's careful, managed deference, it was not entirely gone because you don't undo 18 years of atmosphere in 3 months. But it was changing. She noticed it in the small things first because she always noticed the small things first. The junior staff took actual lunch breaks. The operations team pushed back in a meeting on a decision they thought was wrong, and the decision was revised. Gerald Chen, her original employer, stopped flinching when he passed the North Corridor. These were small things. They added up. Victor Kessler was formally charged 8 weeks after the cooperation agreement activated. His legal team was formidable, and the case would take years. But the financial architecture of his network had been dismantled through the cooperation, which meant his ability to operate had been compromised in ways that the criminal charges were almost secondary to. Reyes called to tell her personally. "He gave a statement to his attorneys," Reyes said. "He said he'd underestimated the secretary." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Good," she said. Raymond Cole pled to reduce charges and entered a supervision program. His sister sent Elena a card, a paper card, handwritten, that said only, "Thank you for whatever you did. I don't know the details, but thank you." Elena read it twice and put it in the top drawer of her desk. She thought about the details she was thanked for, which was not spectacular and was not strategic. She had simply told Damien that there was a reason for 3 years of underperformance, and that reasons mattered, and Damien had made Cole's sister's situation a condition of the agreement. That was all. Sometimes the smallest interventions had the longest reach. The Clement Street project broke ground on a Thursday morning 4 months after the cooperation agreement. Cold day, the sky doing its November version. Flat gray, the promise of weather that hadn't arrived yet. Damien was in a hard hat that he wore with the particular discomfort of a man not accustomed to hard hats. Elena was standing beside him in her coat with her tablet and the project timeline and a coffee that was already going cold. There were people from the neighborhood there, residents who would eventually have equity stakes in what was built here. A city council representative. 2 journalists. Marcus, standing at the perimeter, doing the thing he always did at the perimeter. Damien spoke briefly. She had helped him draft the remarks, though he had changed them significantly, which he thought was correct, because they needed to sound like him. He spoke about what he was trying to build, and why, and what it had cost to get to a starting point this clean. He didn't make it sound easy. He didn't perform humility. He said it plainly, in the flat way he said everything, and it was more honest than any public statement she had ever prepared for an executive in 10 years of doing this. When he was done, a woman in the front row, 50s, a resident of Clement Street, wearing a coat that had seen considerable weather, said, "What happens if you change your mind about all this?" A small pause from the crowd. Damien looked at the woman. "Then the resident equity structure means you don't need my mind to remain changed," he said. "That's the point of building it that way." The woman looked at him for a moment. "All right," she said. Not applause, not enthusiasm, just all right. The measured acceptance of someone who had been promised things before and was choosing to see what happened. Elena thought it was the best response he could have gotten. Afterward, when the journalists had left and the residents had dispersed and Marcus had drifted to the car, Elena and Damien stood for a moment on the cleared ground of what would become the first residential building of the Clement Street project. The ground was cold and bare and had nothing built on it yet, which was the point. "How does it feel?" she said. He looked at the ground, at the construction markers, at the flat gray sky. "Like starting," he said. She thought about a lobby with marble floors and the particular kind of fear that lives in marble lobbies. She thought about $43 and a good bag and a door without a nameplate. She thought about a man at a window and a smile she hadn't meant to give, and the way he had stood in his own office afterward for 2 minutes that he had never quite explained. "Damien," she said. "Yes. That first morning, in your office, after I closed the door." She looked at him. "What were you thinking, actually?" He was quiet for a moment. The wind moved through the cleared site and did something cold to both of them. "I was thinking," he said slowly, "that I couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at me like I was just a person who needed something simple, like sleep." He paused. "And I was thinking that I didn't know what to do with that, because everything in my life for a very long time had been complicated, and that was the most uncomplicated moment I'd had in years." She looked at him. "And then I pulled up your employee file," he said. "I know," she said. "I could tell when you stopped looking at the door." He turned to her. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you're not the only one in this partnership who notices things," she said. The corner of his mouth moved. "The real one. The one that arrived completely when it arrived." He reached over, carefully, the left shoulder still making him deliberate, and his hand found the side of her face, and she let it, and the cold, bare ground of Clement Street held both of them for a moment, with all of it between them, the wrong door and the accidental smile, and the list of 11 names and the envelope under the door, and the 47 minutes in a conference room, and the hand she'd put over his in a moving vehicle while a filing ran toward its completion. All of it. "You told me once," he said quietly, "that love doesn't mean ignoring someone's mistakes. It means choosing what kind of person they want to become." She stilled. "I never said that to you," she said. "No," he admitted. "Marcus told me you said something like it, during one of the early weeks, to another assistant on the floor about a personnel situation." He paused. "I held on to it." She thought about the Harmon account manager, about reasons for 3 years of underperformance, about the things you say in passing that turn out to be the things that last. Is that why you decided to cooperate? She said. The federal case. It's part of why, he said. The other part was that I was tired of being someone who built things on ground that could give way. He looked at her. And the other part was you, which I know is not a decision you can build a legal strategy on. No, she said, but it's a decision you can build everything else on. His hand was still at her face. The wind was doing something serious now, the November weather finally arriving. She stepped forward into the space between them, and he put his good arm around her and she put her face against his shoulder, the good one. And they stood on the cold, bare ground of Clement Street while the city moved around them, doing what cities always do, going on without regard for the particular weight of particular moments. It was not a perfect moment. His shoulder still hurt and her coat was not warm enough, and the ground under their feet was mud and construction markers and a long way from anything finished. But that was the point of beginnings. You started on bare ground. You built slowly. You made it honest from the foundation. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the thing you built on honest ground turned out to be the thing that lasted. Elena Marlowe, who had walked into a building with $43 and a good bag, and the specific desperation of someone who had already lost everything once, stood on the ground of something new, in the arms of a man who had chosen difficult over easy, and understood that she was not starting over. She was just starting. That was enough. That was, in fact, everything.